Hi there, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Seth, and today I'm excited to show you how you can simplify your unit tests in C# using Moq, AutoFake, and xUnit. If you're like me, you might have found that writing tests can be a little bit tiring when you have to mock out all the dependencies. Today, I want to show you how you can avoid having to do this using the power of Moq. So to get started, what I've done is I've just created an API, which we're going to use as the basis for our example. I've also created a test project, which is just inside here. The first thing we're going to do is add the required packages. That would be AutoFixture.AutoMoq, AutoFixture idioms. We need to add Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC testing, which you're probably familiar with if you've done web application testing before. And lastly, we're also going to add Fluent assertions. Fluent assertions isn't necessarily required, but I tend to find that it's just the way I like to write my tests. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go into the program file and we're just going to clear out everything that's in the program. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to create some models. Usually we would build these models into a file of themselves. However, in this example, we're going to just simply put them all into the program file just to make it a little bit easier so we can see what we're doing. So those two models are the payment request and the payment response. And we're going to have two different services which consume these. So the two services I've added here are the payment gateway and the payment service. Payment gateway is meant to simulate an external payment gateway. And what that'll do is it'll check if the amount is over 42. If it is, then it'll return false. This will be important later. Otherwise, we process the payment and we'll get the true back. Of course, in a real scenario, you would not hard coding it. And I think that's all we need to actually start testing. So to get started with the testing, what we're going to do is go into the test project and create a new file. And we're going to create a process payment, valid request, successful payment test. So next, what we're going to do is create a payment gateway mock. So the way we're going to set it up is by calling the method that we want to use. So in this case, process payment. Then what we're going to do is write isAny, which will allow us to, whenever we get any payment requests come through this method, we are going to make sure that we return the response that we are actually looking for. And we're going to do some assertions on this. So first one being is successful, which should be true. And the second is the transaction ID should be the expected transaction IDs. Now, when we run this test, everything should pass, and it passes as we expect. So what we may notice at this point is that that's a lot of code and it's not really doing a lot. This can be improved, and I'm going to show you exactly how that will be done. So AutoFixture has the ability to use additional attributes so that it can actually make it a little bit easier to create some of the auto data for the payment request and for the payment response as well. And this version uses the property auto data, which comes from AutoFixture.xUnit2. So let me explain what this does. So what auto data does is it allows you to create a mock of the payment request with dummy data, so then you don't have to. And so if we run this test, we'll actually notice that it fails. And the reason it fails is because if we debug it right now, what we'll notice is the payment request is being created, but with these random fields. And the account number looks fine. However, the amount is 62. And if we go back to make payment, we'll actually see that we've set if request amount is over 42, that it's going to fail by setting a is successful false. So what that means then is we need to figure out a way to actually set a restriction on that number so then we can actually still pass the test. And the way we're going to do that is by using a new attribute. So the first thing we're going to do is add the word attribute, as that's the convention. The second thing we're going to do is add the attribute usage. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a private func of fixture, taking a nullable fixture. Next, we're going to create a private static method, which returns a fixture. And inside that method, we're going to create a new property called base fixture, which will call a method called create fixture. And we're going to set a customization to that fixture. And what that customization will do is we'll actually connect up Moq with AutoFixture. So we'll use the AutoMoq customization, and we can then set customizations on that. So the one we're going to use is the configure members set the true. And what this does is specifies whether members of a mock will be automatically set up to retrieve the return values from a fixture. But the thing to consider here is that we're setting the customization across the entire project right now. And if you are like me and you want to have this set up in a assistant package, then what you want to do is have it create fixture, and then you want to add extensions to it on a API. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a secondary private static fixture method. And next, we'll see if the customized fixture has been set, because if it hasn't, then we'll simply use the base fixture as it is. Otherwise, we invoke and then we will set that alongside the base fixture. Great. The last thing we need is just to actually set the customization. And what that's going to be is we're going to pass another func of fixture, and we're going to have the customization here with a lambda function going into the customized fixture where we set it with the customization. Great. So what we'll do first is we'll just comment these two out. So what we'll do next is if we run the test, we'll still see that it fails. And the reason it's failing is because we're still not creating a number which is between 1 and 42. So the way we can get around that is by setting customization. So we'll create a new file and we'll call it customizations. And what we're going to do is quickly just paste in this code and I'll explain what it does. So first of all, we're creating the customize fixture. We're passing in a fixture and returning a fixture. And what we're doing then is setting customizations on that fixture. So for the payment request, we've set up two. The first one being that the account number should be a GUID of new GUID. And you can expect that if you need it to be anything more specific, for example, if it needed to be a specific GUID for some reason, then you could also add that specifically in there. The second one we're going to have is setting the amount that's on the payment request. And what we're doing here is we're just using a new GUID of the next int 64, which is the long, and we're setting the bounds. So we're setting between 1 and 42. And then lastly, we're setting the payment response to have a transaction ID with a specific type of transaction ID. Let's say that the third-party payment provider has a very specific key that it has for the transaction ID, and it has something maybe prepended like this. Then you can actually set that here and you won't have to do it later on. And then it means your test will still function without having to set up a lot of kind of boilerplate that you would generally have to do. So to get this to then work, what we do is we go back into the test. In the constructor of the payment service tests, what we can do is we can set the attribute to have the customizations of customized fixture. And now going back into the test, hopefully we'll then see that the test then works, which they do. But can we improve this at all? If you notice that we've actually set in the arrange the expected transaction ID, but in the earlier stage, we set that automatically to always return in that value. So what we can actually do is we can replace this test with the final version. And what you'll notice now is that we aren't explicitly setting that. But what we are doing is for the is successful, we're expecting it to be the same as the payment response is successful, which could be true or false. But we're also expecting the transaction ID to be of the payment response transaction ID. So if we now go in and we debug, what we'll see is that the transaction ID actually has this format transaction underscore GUID, as we would expect. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed what you watched, like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next video.